Hey guys, welcome back. It's nice to see you again. So all this time that I've been living in Pennsylvania, I have been living in a cabin, as you can tell. Well, I've had a couple of people actually ask me what it's like to live in a cabin. So what was the first thing that I thought to do? Make a YouTube video. This is just gonna be my little video of what it's like to live in a cabin. I'm gonna list some pros, I'm gonna list some cons, and then I'm gonna let you guys decide whether cabin living would be for you or whether you just pass on it. So I'm gonna jump right in and start talking about the pros. The first thing on my pros is cabin life is really cozy. Whether you live in a single floor, ranch style kind of cabin, or one of the grand cabins that are log cabins with high ceilings and 2 or 3 floors, cabins are usually known to be extremely comfortable. No matter what, you always feel really at home when you step into a cabin. Number 2 on this list actually ties into the first one. Cabins just have this ambiance, this vibe, if you will. All you need are candles and string lights to really set the mood and to make it feel even more cozy than we initially felt. This is why the ambiance thing ties into the first pro of being super cozy, because the ambiance and the vibe is cozy. Next on my list of pros would have to be all the neutral colors that fit into a cabin. We're talking tans, gold, bronze, and I'm gonna consider like burgundy a part of this because burgundy and brown just really go together. But it's really easy to set a very neutral tone kind of vibe, a lot of earthy tones and things like that. It definitely makes for an easy setup when you're just trying to think of how to set your cabin up. And first thing that comes to mind for me is gold, or tan and burgundy as you see right behind me. Moving on to the next pro, my next favorite thing about cabins in general, and not just my own, is that cabins are really unique. I feel like every cabin I come across is extremely different. The one that I live in is a ranch style cabin, so it's only 1 floor. But when we were first looking for places to live, there was actually another cabin which was a log cabin, completely different from mine. It was 3 floors, absolutely enormous. Each cabin is always really unique, and the way people set it up on the inside contributes to how unique it is. The last pro on this list is gonna have to be a personal one, and this is because my cabin comes with a fireplace. Now most cabins, they usually have fireplaces, which is a huge plus. Not only are they functional, but they're a part of that initial ambiance we were talking about. Living in my cabin for the first year, I got to experience a fireplace for the first time in a home. And honestly, I'm glad I got to experience it here. Now, I have my own separate pros and cons about having a fireplace, but for the most part, having a fireplace is awesome. It warms up the house, it's nice and cozy, and it makes sitting in front of it and watching the TV just that much more beautiful. Especially during the holiday season, which we are currently getting into. Okay, so it's time for me to move into the cons. Living in this house for almost 4 years now has really shown me the things that I would like in a place and the things that I can't stand. With that being said, the first thing on this list of cons is tight spaces. A lot of cabins were built in older times, and a lot of them were built for short-term vacations. So they weren't really thinking of the long run when someone would have to be living here over a long period of time. So when you're here short-term for a week or 2 for a vacation, you're not thinking, wow, these spaces are really tight, or some of these rooms are really small, like hallways or small bedrooms that aren't really usable. In my house, I have a lot of space, but because it was built with vacations in mind, unfortunately, I have some really narrow walkways in my house, and I find myself running into walls and things like that on a daily basis. On to con number 2. In the first con, I mentioned tight spaces, and that had to tie in with it being old. being old plays into a lot of the cons that I have on this list. If I had a newer cabin, then I might not feel this way. But I'm just basing it off of what it's like to live in a cabin like mine. Con number 3, tying into 2 and 1, the house creaks. And it makes a lot of little weird noises that I absolutely cannot stand in the middle of the night. I already have a rabbit and he makes enough noise on his own. I'm joking, he's really not that noisy, but the house definitely is. I don't know if it's just the spaces in between the wood panels just creaking and adjusting with the cold and warm weather. I don't know what it is, but these walls creak and it drives me insane. Con number 4, having dark walls. Now, obviously, the point of living in a cabin is that it's a wood cabin and it's dark wood or light wood depending on where you live, but this wood in particular is dark. I'm not a fan of dark spaces, which is why you see the string lights above. And the thing about dark walls is that when you try to change the light fixtures to make things brighter in here, a lot of the times, if the lights are too bright, they wash out the colors of the walls and it makes the entire place feel super washed out and dead. So we had to go and buy like more yellow lights, which honestly aren't bright. Yellow lights are a little bit warmer and they make the place feel nice and cozy once again, but for functional purposes, it's dark. During the day, I find myself having to open every single window, picking up all the shades, and practically sticking my head in the window like a plant to get sunlight. That also has to do with the direction that my house is facing, considering if you face a specific direction, the sun would come directly into the house. But because my house is not really facing that direction and there are trees and things around, for the most part, there's not too much light that gets let into this house, unless it's like early in the morning. Con number 5 would have to be how hard it is to get creative with colors in here. So I said in my pros that it's really awesome having all the neutral tones in the house and it feels really earthy and it's easy to pick colors that complement the wood. But I'm a colorful person. I enjoy all kinds of crazy colors and really outlandish colors for couches, and in this house it just doesn't work. Some bright colors like yellow or green really go well in here, but let's say I wanted to do blue or purple for whatever reason. I'm not a big fan of purple, but let's just say I was. I wouldn't really have the full opportunity to do so with all the color schemes in this house. So I find myself usually sticking to burgundy, tan, gold, navy blue, which just contributes to how dark the walls are. My last con is not the house's fault. And the last one really just being that cabins are usually found in the middle of nowhere. You're not gonna find a wooden cabin in the middle of Grand Central unless there was some odd exhibit going on. Cabins are usually isolated or just far away from things in general, all the way up in the mountains or all the way in the woods, always in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Which means that I really have nothing around me and have to drive far to get to everything. If you saw my previous video on... I'm so sorry for my extremely rude fridge. If you saw my previous video on things that I basically do and don't like about Pennsylvania and if I would consider moving back to New York, you'll hear me talk about being too far away from things. But I'm in a cabin. What can I expect? Overall, living in a cabin doesn't suck, but it also isn't the best thing. What I'm trying to say is there are pros and cons to everywhere that you live. Whether you're in a big city like New York or a small town in Pennsylvania, you have to take the good with the bad. This is the end of my video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Comment down below if you would live in a cabin or not. And if you do you have any pros and cons of your own? Okay, that's all. Hopefully I'll see you again next time.